Storytime about how I tried to get my boyfriend back for cheating on me, but I ended up with an STD instead. So a little background information. I was dating this guy for about 7 months whenever I was in high school. And I would always hang out with him, his guy friends, and their girlfriends. Well, the one night we were hanging out at my house and he kept checking my phone. And he said it was because he was waiting for his mom to text my phone. So then he had to go to the bathroom and he asked to take my phone with him. And I said no because that's weird as fuck. So while he's in the bathroom, I get a text from a random number. And it's a bunch of videos that my boyfriend took of him doing the nasty with other girls. And there were like 15 videos, all different girls. So by this time, he's been in the bathroom for like 15 minutes. So I go to confront him while he's in the bathroom, like I do not care at this point. And he's gone. My bathroom window is wide open. My curtains are broken. So then I start to text all of his best friends. Like for part 2. Part 2. So it turns out the person who sent it to me was one of the girls in my friend group. So at that point, every single person in that friend group was dead to me and I needed to get every single one of them back. So like I said, I started texting all my ex's best friends and I asked every single one of them if they wanted to hook up. 4 of them said yes, the other 3 just blocked me. And the 4 who said yes all had girlfriends in our friend group. Well, the girls in my friend group had no idea, so they invited me to their party. And at that party, it was my mission to do the dirty with every single one of those guys. Well, there was this bathroom in the basement, which nobody knew about except the girl whose house it was. So one after the other, I did the dirty with every single one of them in that bathroom. And I made sure to snap a picture or take a video, so that way I could send it to my boyfriend. I know, I'm crazy, get over it. Well, in the morning, my ex's closest best friend came over. Well, I did the dirty with him too, because my ex hated him being around me, because he was known for screwing other people's girlfriends. Okay, there's gonna be a part 3. Part 3. So a week later, I started having some problems down there. So I had my mom take me to the doctors. Turns out I have a fucking STD. And nobody knew about it, at least not yet. Well, my boyfriend came over that same day asking if we could get back together. So I thought, what an even better way to get back at him. Give him what I have. Mind you, I was still hooking up with all 4 of his best friends. And then like 2 weeks later, my boyfriend started talking to me about how he was also having problems down there. And I was like, oh, maybe you should go to the doctors. So after he went to the doctors, he texts me and he goes, yeah, I have an STD. So then I sent him all the videos of his best friends and I said, yeah, I hope you enjoy living with that for the rest of your life. And I also gave it to all of his friends and then they spread it to their girlfriends. Payback's a bitch.
Story time about when my mom caught me doing it with my best friend.
I was 16 at the time, and there was this new boy that moved in across the street from us. He was super cute, and I noticed him right away. My parents were super strict. I wasn't allowed to have a boyfriend or even any guy friends, and I knew right away that I wanted to at least become this guy's friend because he was so cute. So one day I told my mom, hey, why don't we take cookies or something to welcome the new neighbors in town? And my mom was like, that's a great idea. So we end up going over and we meet them. They're really nice. And the cute boy comes downstairs and he tells his mom he's going to go to Bible study. Well, when we get home, I tell my mom, hey, you know what? Maybe I should join a Bible study group too. And my mom was like, great idea. She even told me to go ask him about it since he had mentioned it. One day he's mowing the lawn, so I decided to go talk to him and ask him about the Bible study group. He actually ended up taking me there that same day and we had a fun class. Over the next few weeks, we became really, really good friends. Best friends. We told each other everything. But there was always attraction. Part 2. So my neighbor, I'll call him Curtis, we're really good friends at this point, but we were always attracted to each other, but because we were in Bible study together and our parents were very religious, we kind of tried to stay away from anything. One day, we're in my house chilling in my room because I knew my mom wouldn't be home for a while, so I told him to just come upstairs. We ended up eating Pop-Tarts and watching a Netflix show. The whole time I was mustering the courage to tell him that I really liked him because I really felt that I wanted to be honest with him instead of just lying to him, and the whole reason why I even got into the Bible study group was to be with him, or at least spend time with him. So finally, I just blurted it out. I said, I like you. And I like you like a lot. He just stares at me blankly. He doesn't know what to say, and I could tell that he was kind of nervous. So I said, do you like me too? He said, yes, you know that I do. And then we started making out. This was the first time I'd ever been kissed, and it was the first time I'd ever had a boy in my room by myself. I kept thinking my mom could come home at any moment, so I told him that he should go home. Suddenly we're on my bed and we're doing things that I'd never done before. Suddenly my door swings open, and guess who it is? Part 3. So my mom swings the door open and she sees us on my bed doing stuff. Of course, I'm mortified. I'm super embarrassed. I'm also embarrassed because I know how she's going to react in front of him. My mom, of course, just starts yelling her head off. Then we walk over to his house. She proceeds to tell his mom what we did. And then 5 minutes later, my dad walks into their house. I was really afraid of my dad. So now we're in their kitchen and his parents and my parents are just staring us down and telling us that what we did was completely wrong. Then my dad starts saying that we need to get married. I can tell Curtis is freaking out. Of course, I'm freaking out too. His parents actually agree that we should get married. Thankfully, my mom was completely against it and she said absolutely not, they're too young. I literally felt like I was dying. I was obviously grounded for months, couldn't go anywhere, I couldn't do anything, and I obviously didn't speak to Curtis again. Then my mom tells me that Curtis and his family actually moved away. My heart was completely broken. A few years later in college, I contacted him through Facebook. We met up and we've been together ever since. I knew that our connection back then was super strong, and it is now.
Story time about how I woke up to my best friend having a seizure. A little background information. So my close friend invited me over to his house to spend the night, and we're gonna call him Jay. Well, Jay and I got to his house, and his parents were really strict, so he had to sneak me in. So he told me to wait by the garage, and as soon as he opens the front door to his house, I hear his parents screaming. So he's inside fighting with his parents, I'm outside freezing my ass off. So an hour later, he comes out to get me, walks me through the garage, and I have to hide in this crawl space. So while I'm hiding in this crawl space, him and his parents are still arguing. And his parents walk past where I was like 5 times. So his mom gets in the car and leaves. She said she was going to kill herself. His dad comes into the garage, starts crying. I literally witnessed him have a mental fucking breakdown. Then his mom came back, said that she hated everybody. So then Jay purposely bangs his head off of the kitchen table 2 times. So when he came into the garage to get me, he had an ice pack on his head. Then we snuck up to his room like for part 2. Part 2. So like I said, he rushes me up to his room because his dad was in the basement and his mom left again, threatening to kill herself again. And while we're upstairs, he starts taking dabs. And we're up for a little bit and then we go to sleep. So at like 8 in the morning, we both wake up. He's on his phone, I'm on my phone. We're not facing each other. And then all of a sudden, I feel the bed start to shake like a lot. So I turn over and this kid is having a full-blown fucking seizure. Like he's foaming at the mouth. His eyes are literally rolling in the back of his fucking head. So I get up and roll him over onto his side because I didn't want him to start choking. And I'm fucking freaking out and don't know what to do because I wasn't even supposed to be there in the first place. And he's like making all these types of noises. So I go and I run down the hallway. I try to find his parents' room. And I open the door and have to wake them up dead out of their sleep. And I was like, your son's having a seizure. So his mom runs over to the room and his dad's like, well, who the fuck are you? And why the fuck are you in my house? And I was like, your son told me that I could stay the night last night. Oh, like for part 3. Part 3. So like I said, his dad's like interrogating me right now. So they call an ambulance. His son leaves in the ambulance. They didn't go with him. And his dad's like, you're never allowed in this fucking house again. And then he asked me, did he take anything last night? And I'm like, he did dabs, but like, I didn't do anything because I don't do that stuff. So he goes over to where all of his dab stuff is and starts throwing the glass pieces in the garbage, making sure that he fucking breaks them all. And his mom comes over to me to comfort me because I'm literally like fucking crying because this kid almost died right next to me. And she's like, it's okay, sweetie, like this happens to him a lot. But I felt so uncomfortable because he was like making it seem like it was my fault. So I hurry up and call my mom, and my mom doesn't get there till like 30 minutes because their house is a little bit further away. And for all of you wondering what happened to him, I don't know because this happened this morning.
Here's a story time about when I broke off my 1.5-year engagement with my ex-fiance. We met on a movie set, he was playing my boyfriend, and within a week, we were already calling each other boyfriend and girlfriend. 2 months into the relationship, he convinced me to move to LA with him because we both wanted to pursue acting seriously, and he was an established model already. He had worked in Tokyo and Paris as a model. Of course, I was so in love, I said yes, and I left my family, which was really heartbreaking for them. I will totally always regret that decision because I left way too soon. I was so young. We struggled for money in LA, but I decided to get a serving job, so I was making more money than he was because he was working at a movie theater making $8 an hour. Because of this, I had to pay for a lot of the bills, and I even started helping him pay off his school loans. We also shared a banking account, which was terrible because I was putting in way more money than he was. I hated the apartment we lived in because I would wake up with roaches in my hair, so I decided to get a second serving job. When I asked him to get a second job as well, he said no because he was very happy at his job. Part 2. So I asked my fiance if he could get a second job to help me out with the bills, and he said no. I would tell my mom and sisters about the situation, and they would tell me that he should definitely be helping me out more, and I just would make up excuses for him, and I just thought, it's okay, he can work at the movie theater, and I will work my 2 jobs. At this point, I was paying for most of the rent, most of the bills, and his student school loans. I owed $20,000, you guys, and I was paying for all of that. I even got a 3rd job because I wanted to save up to move out of that crappy apartment. Finally, I got hired at the strip club as a cocktail waitress, and I was able to quit all of my other jobs. My ex-fiance was definitely happy with the amount of money I was making at the strip club. Of course, he felt absolutely no pressure to get a new job and help me out. I finally put my foot down and told him we were moving to a better apartment because I was not happy in the apartment we were in. I told him he had no right to say no because I was the one paying for everything. We found the perfect apartment and I loved it. It was absolutely beautiful and I felt so at home there. Then one night, I was sexually assaulted at the strip club. Of course, I was really affected by it. At first, he was supportive, but after a few days, he basically told me to get over it. Part 3. When he told me to just get over the sexual assault that I experienced at the strip club, I was shocked. I couldn't believe that the man I was about to marry would be so insensitive. And then I just started realizing, wait, I am paying for everything. I pay for your bills, I pay for your rent, I pay for your student loans, and you're here telling me to just get over this sexual assault. It was like someone had put a mirror to my face and was showing me the truth. Final straw was when I told him I wanted to quit the strip club because I didn't want to be in that environment and I didn't want to see the man that had sexually assaulted me again. He said, absolutely not, you can't quit, the money is too good. And that's when I broke up with him. I told him that I couldn't be with someone who didn't care enough about me and only really cared about the money and to be kept. He was so comfortable with me paying for everything and him just chilling at a job where he got paid $8 an hour while I was busting my butt every single night. He told me I would never find anyone better than him. The breakup was amicable, thank God. He didn't stress me out or anything. He kind of said, you know, you'll be back. Of course, I never went back. Know your worth and be with someone who actually cares about you.
Am I the asshole for marrying my sister's baby daddy? I, 36-year-old female, and my sister, 29 female, got pregnant when she was 18 years old. I am infertile and knew I couldn't have kids, so when my sister said she was giving her baby up for adoption, I decided to be her mom. My sister went no contact 5 months after giving birth. For a bit of background, my sister got pregnant by a one-night stand and she apparently didn't remember or know the father at the time of birth, but when my daughter V was born, a man T, 35, messaged me on social media claiming to be the father of my child. My sister had run into him at a club and drunkenly confessed to the pregnancy. We met up, he bonded with his daughter, and well, that man is now my husband of 7 years. Coming back to my sister, she called me yesterday. Although I was surprised at her call, I picked up. We made some small talk and then she said she had just gotten married a year back and both of them wanted children but couldn't because her husband was infertile but really wanted kids. I asked her if she wanted to adopt and she said no, she just wanted her baby back. I was speechless for a few moments before replying that if she wants to meet my child as an aunt, she is welcome to, and we can both sit V down and explain the reason for her absence, but she can't just ask me to give up my child. My sister said she'll sue me as she is the birth mother. I told her she was out of her mind, and then I told her how I married the baby daddy, T. She exploded, calling me names and saying I stole her life. My husband came home from work, and when I explained to him, he was beyond furious. I then got a call from my parents saying I was an asshole for telling my sister she's not allowed to see her baby. I never said that, and I welcomed her to bond with V, but they refused to listen and said I was being insensitive and harsh and flaunting my family. I now feel bad because my sister and I were very close growing up, and I feel quite close to her situation since I know the struggles of infertility. My husband said there was no way he was letting my sister have full time alone with V, and I agree, but I want to know if I'm the asshole for being too harsh and telling her about T.
Storytime about how my boyfriend was cheating on me with my stepsister. So a little background information, my mom remarried whenever I was in 8th grade, and my stepdad had 2 daughters, one which was my age and we got along really well. Well, before my sisters and I went back to school, my mom wanted to go on a camping trip with everyone, and my boyfriend was coming because he was really close with my family. So while my stepsister and I are packing up, she starts acting really weird, and we're gonna call my boyfriend Kevin. She was like, oh, is Kevin still coming with us? And I was like, yeah. And then she goes, oh, are you and Kevin still together? And I'm like, we were never broken up. Like, the fuck? Like I said, she was just being super fucking weird. But anyways, we all get in the car, we drive up there, and her and Kevin start being super weird around each other. Like, they were being too touchy. Anytime that I wanted to go do something with Kevin, she would say, oh, Kevin, you can come do this instead. Well, that night, Kevin and I are sleeping in our tent. At least I thought he was. And I wake up to some loud noises in the other tent, like for part 2. Part 2. So like I said, I heard a bunch of noises and talking in my stepsister's tent, and I wake up and my boyfriend isn't in the tent. So I'd be very quiet getting out of my tent, and I go over to hers and I just listen. And oh bitch, I should have just confronted them because I got my motherfucking feelings hurt. He was telling her how he didn't love me at all and how he only wanted to be with her, and how every time that they kissed each other and screwed each other, he felt such a connection between them. So not only was he cheating physically, but they had a connection. Wonderful. So I open her tent and I confront them. This was the most degrading thing I've ever went through in my life. And I said, I heard you guys outside. And I'm just not the type of girl who's going to come at another girl because my man wants her. Because at that point, he's not my man. She goes, sit down, sweetie, we need to talk. Apparently they're in love. So they started dating. They're still dating. And my parents allowed it. So I distanced myself from all of them.
Am I the asshole for making my brother leave after he brought his kids to my child-free wedding? My wife and I got married days ago. We decided the wedding will be child-free. We thought this was the best option considering several factors from budget to keeping the order, etc. Everyone got an invitation, but my biggest concern was how my brother Ramsey, 36, was going to react. Ramsey married young and has 4 kids that he takes everywhere he and his wife goes. They're always there at every family event. The kids are grade A hyperactive to say the least. I gave Ramsey the invitation in person and he read it out loud in a sarcastic tone and then said, "Child free, huh?" I nodded and he got somewhat mad saying, "Are you serious?" But my children have never been excluded from any big or small event, let alone their own uncle's wedding. I said sorry, but it's already been decided and everyone had to follow the rules, not just him. He started off for a minute and then to my surprise he said, "I totally get it, man. No children means no children. No worries." I was glad he didn't start an argument over it and seemed to accept the rule. The day of the wedding came and Ramsey and his wife didn't show up until shortly before the ceremony began. My best man noticed that Ramsey had arrived and had all his kids with him. I was legit mad and I went to meet him at the entrance and saw he brought all his kids against me and my wife's wishes. I greeted the kids and asked my sister-in-law to take them back to the car. He loudly asked what the F was wrong with me. I asked why he brought his kids and who said it was okay. He said no one, but he was planning on bringing the kids all along and figured that by initially agreeing to my rule, then showing up with the kids anyway would get me to agree on letting them stay. I stated this was no event for kids for many reasons and that everyone respected the rule except him. He complained about me disrespecting him and his kids since, again, he never attends any event without them. In his words, "Wherever I go, my kids follow, period." I told him he needed to leave then. Not only did he call me a lunatic, but a terrible brother and terrible uncle. He also called me a simp for agreeing to his wife's stupid rule, saying that if it was him and his wife even hinted he couldn't have his family's kids at their wedding, he would have dropped her right there and then. It was humiliating and loud enough for the guests to notice. My in-laws did too. I told him to leave and that's when my mom and aunt tried to convince me to let it go and let them stay, but I refused and had him leave after a massive argument between us. To say that I felt absolutely shitty is an understatement. Everyone gave me grief ever since that incident and are siding with Ramsey, saying I wronged him and acted cold towards him and his kids when they showed up to celebrate me and my wife. My dad is especially pissed at me for potentially permanently effing up my relationship with Ramsey, his wife and kids by kicking them out of my wedding. He quoted Ramsey won't ever forget this day. So am I the asshole?
Story time about when my crazy celeb ex made me take a drug test because he thought I was cheating on him and stealing his drugs.
Most of you already know who I'm talking about, but if you don't, he's on TV right now. Leave your guesses in the comments. At this point, we had been together about 6 months, but every time we would break up, one of us would go back. It was a very toxic cycle, but I was definitely ready to leave him at this point. I was just scared and I didn't know how to do it. He had this thing about his closet where he never left the door open and I could never go in. And he would specifically tell me not to go into his closet. He even carried his closet keys or hid them when I was around. Well, this one time I'm just chilling at his house and he comes up to me and he says, "Why did you open my safe?" And I said, "I can't even get into your closet where the safe is because I don't have keys. How would I be able to get into your safe without the combination?" Then he takes me into the closet, opens the safe, and shows me what's in there. And it's a bunch of illegal stuff that I really didn't know was there. Of course, I started to get really nervous and scared. And he accused me of stealing money and drugs and giving it to my pimp because he had a theory that I was an escort or a prostitute. And he said he couldn't trust me any longer and took me to CVS to get a drug test. Come back for part 2. Part 2. So he takes me to CVS, and on the way there, he's yelling and telling me that if I don't pass this test, we're totally through. I told him that I would pass the test for sure, but that we were through anyway. He said he was convinced that I was a drug addict and that he needed to get away from me. Mind you, he's the one with the closet full of drugs. We get to CVS, I'm bawling my eyes out and my hands and knees are trembling. As we're entering the CVS, this man comes up to us, out of nowhere, like an angel. And he says to me, "Are you okay? Do you need some water?" And then he looks at my ex and he's like, "Hey, maybe you guys need to, sit down and talk things through." Of course, my ex answered for me and he said, "No, she's fine, don't worry." I must have looked like I needed help. The man kept close and stood at the register the whole time, kind of watching us. We got the drug test and then he rushed me back to the car. We drive back in silence to his house. And the whole time I'm just thinking, I don't need this, just leave him. I pee on the stick and then I give it back to him. He starts crying and saying that it's over because he knows it's going to come back positive. I got my things in line. A few days later, he comes to my apartment and he's really angry. Come back for part 3. Part 3, knocks on my door, I open, and the look on his face is just of pure anger. He throws the drug test results on the couch and says, "How did you pass?" And I said, "I don't do drugs." He watched me pee, you guys. He watched me pee on that stick. He said I must have taken something and there was no way I could pass the test. Then I just started yelling at him and I told him to get out. You guys, he was shocked. I had never kicked him out of my apartment before. He was shocked. Then he started crying and he said, "I can't believe you're kicking me out of your apartment." And I told him, "You made me go to CVS, take a drug test, I passed the test and you're still mad? You're never going to trust me and this isn't going to work." He said, "Of course we can work on it. You just have to stop lying to me." After I kicked him out, I felt relief. I thought it could really be over. A few days later, he calls me apologizing and crying, begging me to go back. When you're in love and you start seeing red flags, you just will do anything to ignore them. I did. Don't do the same thing.
Storytime about how I broke up my best friend and his girlfriend. So it was our sophomore year in high school, and my best friend and I had known each other since we were like 8 years old. And I've always had a crush on him. Like anytime he would get a girlfriend, I would try and break them up. And it would work. Well, our freshman year of high school, he started dating this one girl. Well, when he started dating her, he distanced himself from me because she didn't like how much time we were spending together. So a few months go by and my birthday's coming up. And mind you, within these past few months, we only seen each other like twice. And he had me blocked on all social media. Well, our parents were really good friends because we lived in the same cul-de-sac. So my mom invited him and his parents to my birthday party. So at the end of my party, my friends left and him and his parents stayed. And my parents really didn't care if I drank alcohol, so we had like a whole bottle of vodka to ourselves. So we're in the basement and we're taking shots together. Well, I got him super drunk and he fell asleep. And while he was sleeping, I went on his phone and like for part two. And I was able to get into his phone because he stole my fingerprint from when we were best friends. So I unblocked myself on all social medias, and there was an ottoman pushed against the couch, so while he was sleeping, I was able to go lay next to him. So while I was laying next to him, I took a few pictures of us, and I saved them in his camera roll, and I also sent one to his girlfriend, and it was about 1 a.m. Well, she opened it right away, and then she started going off and would not stop calling his phone. So after that, I turned his phone off. So he started to wake up, and then we started drinking more, and then we started fooling around. And while we were doing the nasty, I took a video, but he didn't see it because the phone was in front of me. And I had his girlfriend on Snapchat. So what did I do? I sent the motherfucking video to her. So the next day, obviously, he found out what happened. So then he came over to my house to talk to me, and I told him how I was upset that she was keeping him from me. So he broke up with her and started dating me.
Saw you coming until you turned me around. I used to think I was nothing, but look at this love we found. So give me your hand, I can survive. No, I don't ever wanna see you cry. Oh, yeah, no more tears. Oh, yeah, no more tears. Take that chance, we'll be fine. No, I don't ever wanna see you cry.
Am I the asshole for making my boyfriend rehome his German Shepherd? Me and my boyfriend have been together since we were in university. We're both 23 and recently moved in together. We both went to our local university, so we both lived at home so we'd be able to save money. Around a year after we started dating, my boyfriend got a German Shepherd puppy. I've never been a fan of German Shepherds, but I'm a dog lover, so I wasn't going to tell him not to get one when we weren't even living together yet. When we moved in, my dislike of German Shepherd was confirmed. The dog leaves hair all over the place, barks whenever someone walks by our house, needs extreme amounts of exercise. I could go on for hours. However, I was willing to put up with it since my boyfriend had otherwise trained him well. I now realize how stupid that was, since the dog breed seems to have problems regardless of how well it's trained. I recently got a Rottweiler puppy, and to say that I formed a bond with him would be an understatement. The German Shepherd, on the other hand, didn't take too kindly to the puppy and would have made its disdain for the dog known. Me and my boyfriend took the dog to the vet to see where the issue could come from, and she told us that some German Shepherds just don't get along with other dogs. My boyfriend suggested that we may have to rehome my puppy due to his puppy's disdain of him, and he could still find a good home since he was only 5 months. The thought of rehoming something I loved for a dog I couldn't stand mortified me, and to think that the only reason for rehoming him would be because of another dog's nasty behavior didn't make the situation any better. I told my boyfriend that there was no way I was rehoming my puppy and that I'd be willing to move out if need be. After days of arguing, my boyfriend took the dog to the local shelter. The house has been much quieter since, and I can honestly say it was one of the best decisions I ever made. My sister, on the other hand, didn't hold this sentiment and actually referred to me as an evil bitch for putting my boyfriend in this position. So it got me thinking, am I the asshole? Am I the asshole for refusing to let my family meet my daughter after all of them dropped out of my wedding upon finding out my wife was pregnant? I come from a conservative Christian family. All my family members were/are involved in the church and have church-based jobs. When they met my wife, they loved her and embraced her as their own. We dated for 2 years and discovered she was pregnant after we got engaged. Invitations were already given at the time, and we decided to still have the wedding on the date when my wife was 5 months in. My family was furious when they found out my wife was pregnant. They asked if we were even still considering having a wedding. I said why not, but they were very upset, especially my mom and dad, who said that they've always been known for their decency and good Christian values, and they weren't willing to let this stain their reputation, as in my wife and I getting married while pregnant. They officially dropped out and refused to negotiate, saying it was done and I have only myself to blame for this outcome and should have moved the wedding to out of town. I was hurt and I tried to change their minds and checked with other members, but my brother said he had no intentions to look like a joke in front of his fellow church members and dropped out too. My aunt pretended to be sick and said she may not be able to make it. She's 100% healthy. My cousin said he had a business trip and stopped his wife and kids from attending, and my uncle cussed me out, tore up the invitation, and kicked me out. I felt terrible with no family members of my own to support me and share my joy at my wedding. I even broke down crying after the ceremony ceremony. I haven't spoken to them for months and then got busy with my 4-week-old daughter. My cousin reached out to hand me gifts and well wishes for the birth of my daughter sent from my family. I returned everything. He sat with me on behalf of my family and said I shouldn't have returned the gifts and that they were from my family who want to see and hopefully be involved in my daughter's life. He said my mom's longing to meet her grandbaby and everyone else is wanting to visit soon to celebrate my daughter's life. I said, wasn't my daughter the reason why the entire lot of them abandoned my wedding? My daughter at some point will ask about the wedding and I have no intentions on lying to her. He just started stuttering as I went on about how they treated my daughter as someone to be ashamed of and hide. He replied saying he guaranteed I got it all wrong and no matter what goes down between us, I can never deny that my daughter is their granddaughter/niece, etc., and that they're family. He asked that I arrange for them to visit, but I refused. My wife says I should let them come, but I still refuse. So, am I the asshole? Am I the asshole for not having my stepdaughter in the family photo? I, 32 female, and my husband Jack, 36 male, have 3 kids together. Lydia, 5, Carol, 2, Solomon, 8. Jack has a nephrine, 8 female from a different marriage. It's our last week of summer before the kids start school, so we decided to rent a lovely little beach cottage for the week. It's a common theme in my family to take Christmas card photos while on vacation, so naturally I wanted to take the photos while we were away. Here's a problem. Jack is white, but Anefrine's mom is black and she turned out looking very much like her. I don't care what race she is, but my parents, however, are pretty racist. I have limited contact with them for several reasons, so they've never met Anefrine, but we're on Christmas card terms. I don't want to send them a card that Anefrine is on because they will make a fuss about the certain word with the hard R, child. So my plan was to take pictures with just me, husband, and bio kids for my parents and a couple other relatives, and then have her be in the picture for Jack's family and our friends. But when I called picture time and told the nephew she wasn't going to be in this picture but the next one, she started to look upset. I did let her take our pictures, which lifted her spirits, and we got some lovely pictures with her too. We also got some ice cream and she hasn't been upset beyond that initial moment. The trouble came later when Jack asked why I didn't want a nephew in the photo. He said he thought it was maybe so I could get one with all of my kids. I didn't want to lie to him, so I told him why, because I don't want Anefrine to be exposed to people who could potentially and emotionally hurt her. Just like that, he went from being understanding to pissed. And I guess he said, she didn't want you in her picture because you're black, or something like that to his daughter, and now she's upset with me too. I really wasn't trying to hurt her in any way. I did this out of care and love, but I think I might have done it in a wrong way. So, am I the asshole? Am I wrong for telling my sister her rainbow baby isn't special? I, 27 female, have a set of twins, Ben and Betty. They just turned 6. My sister, 32 female, has Connor, who is 4. My sister and her husband lost their first baby due to SIDS. It was devastating for the whole family and I was behind my sister 100% of the way. I couldn't imagine what it was like. Anyway, when she found out she was pregnant with Connor, we were all excited. The pregnancy went well and Connor got a good bill of health. I love my sister and I love my nephew, but my sister is convinced that because he's her rainbow baby, that means he can do whatever he wants. Connor is incredibly spoiled and a brat. He throws fits to get his way, hits, kicks, cries, whatever it takes. My sister and her husband give him no discipline. He's their rainbow baby, so that is their excuse for his bad behavior. Their lives are to serve for whatever Connor wants. My twins just turned 6 and we had a small party for them. Everyone was having a good time except for Connor. He wanted cake, didn't like the games, wanted to watch TV, wanted ice cream now, didn't want other kids to touch him, and etc. Basically, the whole party, Connor threw a tantrum. The final straw came at present time. My husband went to get the gifts out of the living room only to find Connor had ripped nearly all of them open. My sister made excuses saying he was just excited and wanted to play with my kids' new toys. I lost it. I told her that Connor isn't special, that he's a brat and he's been ruining the party since he got here. My sister immediately went on that he's her rainbow baby and he didn't mean it and maybe I should have put the presents where he couldn't get to them. They were in the living room and the party was outside. No one was inside. I lost my temper. I know I did. This was my kid's party though. I said some nasty things to her. I told her that Connor isn't a baby anymore and he's not special and she's raising a self-centered brat who will grow up to be a self-centered adult. She left the party and then my parents called. They said they understood my frustrations and everything about the situation. Then they said they still feel like I should apologize to my sister. Why? Because I have 2 healthy kids while she lost 1 and she's still having to deal with it? I told them no, my sister should apologize for how her son acted at the party. My husband and the guests who were at the party are on my side. My sister hasn't really spoken to me in a few days, just posted passive-aggressive things on social media, which I just blocked. Am I wrong for kicking my brother out for announcing his wife's pregnancy right after I announced my daughter had cancer? Just to make sure I represent both sides of the conflict, my brother and his wife suffered from not having kids for years. It impacted them greatly. They love the kids in the family but always wish to have kids of their own. Lately, we got busy with my daughter Megan, who is 12, with health problems. She started suffering from anemia, loss of appetite, and recurrent fevers. We've taken her to the pediatrician and from there we've learned that she has cancer. It was so devastating, I didn't want to tell my family right away. Most of them have chronic conditions and this type of news might trigger a negative reaction because they love Megan and would give everything to see her healthy. My husband and I decided to gather the family at my house this past Wednesday to announce Megan's diagnosis. My aunt didn't take it well because she holds Megan dear, so she was rightfully the most devastated one. After a few minutes of complete silence, my brother started moving in his seat, saying there's something very serious he wanted to tell everyone. He was hesitant, but then he and his wife stood up, and then he said that they found out that they were finally expecting. The family were conflicted. Some got up to congratulate them, and some remained seated. I remained seated, and my brother then approached me and expressed how sorry he was that they had to tell us in these circumstances, but said he couldn't wait since this is a huge deal for them after years of waiting and because everyone was present. Literally everyone was there since I said the announcement we wanted to make concerned Megan. I argued with him about how he thought this was an appropriate time and asked if Megan mattered to him at all since he didn't take a minute to realize she was just diagnosed with cancer. He started reminding me how many years he and his wife suffered from frustration and disappointment for not being able to have kids, and argued that because he wasn't able to be a father until now, he's 37, he felt he was missing out on so much for many years, and that I didn't have to finally tell him congratulations, but should at least not guilt him for feeling overwhelmed and excited to finally be a father. He said I knew exactly how much he adores Megan and I shouldn't even think otherwise. Then said he was just sharing good news after hearing the bad news and there was nothing wrong with that. I told him and his wife to leave the house right then. He said he won't argue anymore because of how tense I felt, but will expect me to apologize at some point. Some family agreed with me, but my parents thought I shouldn't have taken my anger out on him like that, and that he'll always remember my reaction to the news he gave and should apologize after I've calmed down. Am I wrong for taking my friend to court after she kicked me out of the bridal party for cutting my hair? For my friend's 3-day wedding, I had to buy 3 different dresses, including alterations and specific shoes, which totaled over $700. She also wanted specific hairstyles for each day. Unfortunately, starting in March, my hair started to deteriorate. Due to health reasons, my hair was falling out in chunks, and in May, I made the difficult decision to cut my hair. I told the bride about my decision 2 weeks before the wedding, and she didn't say anything bad. The following week, she came over to my house, and when she was about to leave, she brought up that she was concerned about my haircut, and I told her it would look good even though I wouldn't be in uniform with the other bridesmaids. The following day, I received this message. After our recent conversations, I'd like to remind you of my boundaries. I've been very accommodating and graceful, but I cannot allow you to disrespect me. As you know, my wedding has been something I've dreamt of for many years. My husband and I have invested a lot of money into the video and photos of this day, and as we reflect on this day in the future, we want to see our vision reflected in the memories. Since I asked each of you to be my bridesmaids in 2019, I've been very clearly and very communicative in my request. The timing of your decision to cut your hair and not come in advance is very upsetting to me. I would have felt respected if you had communicated with me more than a week prior to the wedding, so we could have worked together to find a collaborative solution. Your inconsistencies have concerned me, and while I sympathize with your health condition, I'm not willing to compromise my vision to accommodate you or anyone else when you have informed me in advance and we could have found a better solution. Since this is something you can no longer fully commit to, I need you to please step down from participating in my wedding. This was 3 days before the wedding. I immediately sent her and her husband an invoice asking them to reimburse for the dresses and shoes, keeping in mind that one of the dresses is still in her possession even though I paid for it. I was told I was inconsistent and selfish after I spent the past 2 weeks helping her plan the wedding shower. I worked with another bridesmaid to surprise her with a bridal shower after our bachelorette trip had to be canceled. I spent hours helping her out with wedding details. When she asked me to help her tone up before the wedding, I sent her a personalized workout program and even went with her to the gym to show her the ropes. When I agreed to be her bridesmaid, I was more than willing to oblige with what she asked, even if at times it was a lot of time and money. So, am I wrong for taking her to court because she kicked me out for cutting my hair?
Story time about how I'm hooking up with my boss's husband. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was something on Instagram. Let's get this out of the way. Yes, I'm a homewrecker. Am I proud of it? No, but just hear me out. A few years ago, I had moved to a new city and didn't have any friends at all. My goal was to get a job and make some new friends. Luckily, I got a job right away. After working there for a few weeks, I noticed that my boss would get really jealous anytime her husband would come into the store. Here's the reason why. Her husband is super attractive. He's like way more attractive than she is. Anyway, there were a bunch of girls that worked at the store. I wasn't the only one, but it was like some kind of unspoken rule that you never spoke to the boss's husband. After a month of working there, I would avoid him at all cost. But here's the thing, he actually would go out of his way to come say hi to me. At first I thought this was flattering, but then I realized I could be playing with fire. So I decided to be really cold towards him. Well, this didn't work because it actually made him want to talk to me even more. A few days later, I get a text from an unknown number. Can you guess who it is? Yep, it's my boss's husband. In the message, he basically said that if he had done anything wrong to let him know because he didn't want me to feel uncomfortable around him. That's when I told him that none of the girls at the store were allowed to talk to him or even make eye contact with him. And that was the reason why I didn't speak to him. He told me that I must have misunderstood because he's friends with all of the girls who work there, which I knew was not true. The next day I go into work and he actually shows up at lunchtime. I was by myself at the store. It's like he almost knew that I was there by myself, so he decided to come over. And he started flirting. He pretty much complimented everything about me and asked me if I was making friends. Then he asked me for permission to follow me on Instagram. Of course, I was like, yeah, you can follow me. After that, we basically talked on Instagram almost every single day. He would watch and reply to all of my stories. One time I posted a story of me having dinner with some guy, and he replied right away and asked me if I was on a date. I said yes. Then he told me that he was actually jealous. I didn't know how to reply, so I just said LOL.
Then he said, what are we gonna do about this? I told him probably nothing because his wife would get upset. Then he said, I've got my ways, don't worry. He asked me to go to the movies and we went, and we basically made out the entire time. After the movie, we sat in his car and he told me that he hated his wife and that he was planning on divorcing her. He was even crying. I mean, I had to believe him. He asked me to keep everything secret, and of course I said yes. I mean, I didn't want to lose my job. This went on for 2 months. One day he calls me and tells me that his wife actually read our messages. Part 2 is up. My boss's husband, aka the guy I'm having an affair with, he calls me up to tell me that she actually saw the text messages between us. Disclaimers, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I repeat, this is not my story time. Luckily, he did not save my number under my name. So basically, she saw messages between him and some other girl. He was really freaking out. But that's when I told him this is your way out. According to him, he hated his wife. So I told him this is perfect, just ask her for a divorce. That's when he told me there was no way he would ever divorce her. He told me that she was the only one who made money in the relationship and that if they ever got divorced, she would leave him nothing. He also told me that he was no longer attracted to her, but that the money was just too good and he had to stay in the relationship. At that point, I started feeling really bad. I was under the impression that he absolutely hated her and that she was terrible towards him, but apparently not. Thankfully, she didn't know it was me the one that was messaging him. He actually made up a lie and told her it was some girl from Instagram that he met. When I showed up to work later that day, my boss was in a really bad mood, and I knew why. Suddenly, she tells all of those girls to pull out our phones and open our text messages. My stomach dropped because stupid me had not deleted all the messages. She started going one by one checking everyone's phone, but luckily I was able to delete everything by the time she got to mine. That's when she told us all to go home. As soon as I got in my car, I decided to call him. I told him what had happened and he told me that everything should be under control and that she believes what he said. He asked me if we could meet up and I said yes. I just couldn't resist the temptation. A few days later, I came into work early by mistake. I find him talking to one of the other girls. When he saw me, he literally backed away from her. I instantly got upset and realized that he had probably been having affairs with a bunch of the other girls. I decided to confront the girl that he was talking to and she told me the truth. They had been having an affair for a year now and that he had probably had affairs with all the girls that worked there. No wonder my boss was so paranoid. When I asked him about it, he totally denied it. I kind of want to tell my boss now and just confess everything, but I'd risk losing my job, which pays really well and I actually love. I'm hoping you guys can tell me what to do. Help me.
As much as it pains me to say this, before my daughter turned 17, I didn't feel any love for her. I didn't even like her, really. She certainly thought I did, but on the inside, I just couldn't feel anything but annoyance towards her. She was very manipulative and needed constant attention. I know that this is a common feeling in parents, but I feel so ashamed to actually say it out loud. 2 particularly traumatic instances for me were one, where I was going through an extremely tough time and she wasn't there for me. She never gave me support or comfort that I needed, and there is no worse feeling than being betrayed by family. She was a teenager and old enough to know better. And 2, there was a period when she was really pestering me to take her to a psychologist, and one time I caught her forcing herself to throw up. I didn't know what to do and felt completely helpless. She's 18 now and lots better. She almost never complains about anything and is always there when I need a shoulder to cry on. My 2 older children were visiting last night and we were discussing family memories. And while we were joking, I mentioned in passing to her, "You really fucked me up good." She asked what I meant and I told her about the 2 incidents I mentioned before. She got quiet and eventually said, "You know, I really needed your help back then, and you just wouldn't." I told her that I needed her help too, but she came back with, "I'm your daughter." I told her, "Yes, and I'm your mother. What's your point?" She ended up going home with her older sister and she won't return any of my calls. Her older sister called and told me that I had really hurt her last night and that I needed to apologize. I personally don't feel like I owe my daughter anything. She abused me her whole life.
Am I the asshole for not wanting my fiance's parents to move in next door? My fiance and I live in a duplex that I inherited from my late aunt. My aunt was wheelchair bound, so her unit was renovated to be wheelchair accessible. The unit my fiance and I live in do not have the same accommodations. My brother's partner is disabled and uses a wheelchair. While they're renting a wheelchair-friendly apartment, their landlord has decided to raise the rent next year by a significant amount. It will put a serious strain on their finances. I told my brother they can move in my aunt's place when their lease is over. We agreed I would charge a token amount for rent and my brother would help me with maintenance. A few days ago, my fiance told me that his father had been diagnosed with cancer. Am I the asshole for not wanting my fiance's parents to move in next door? A few days ago, my fiance told me that his father had been diagnosed with cancer. While thankfully it's not terminal, he does need to undergo chemo for a while. My fiance asked me if his parents could move in next door since we live near the hospital and they currently live 2 hours away. I told my fiance I was fine with his parents moving into our unit with us, but I'm not going back on my agreement with my brother and brother-in-law. He said this wasn't a feasible solution. He argued that my brother can wait another year or so to move in and his dad needs treatment soon. They can renew their lease and I can help them with rent. My in-laws are well off and can afford to rent a place that fits their needs.